Today we are showcasing Roti-Matic. It's a fully automated roti maker. This is the first time we are bringing to Canada, and it's available on bestbuy.ca online.
Been using this device for a year now, and it's absolutely lifesaver to me.
This is a very handy device. It's a small, compact, very easy to make the rotis.
You can make crepes, you can make wraps, you can make rotis, parathas. Multi-talented machine this is.
Now Roti-Matic is available in Canada online at bestbuy.ca. Free shipping within 3 to 5 business days across Canada. Welcome to Behind the News, your weekly analysis of worldly news. I'm Halima Sadia, and I am joined by our expert analyst Mohammad Rizman in the studio. And today we will start our discussion with the activities of Pakistani diplomats who are bringing their geopolitical rivalries in Canada. Rizman, what do you think? How should we look upon such activities?
Halima, let me begin by saying that it was very surprising and very, I would say, unbecoming of a diplomat. I mean, normally diplomats don't allow themselves to go into activities like this. Let me start by saying what happened. There was a greeting ceremony, greeting function of 6 separatists. The 6 groups who are fighting for separatism in India and in the name of Khalistani. And there are many, and many of them are based in Canada. And they invited Pakistani Consul General, who is a diplomat, and to thank him apparently for the opening of Kartarpur corridor. Now the thing is that the Khalistani people, I mean that opening of the corridor should be the last thing of their concern, because most of them cannot go to India. They are on the Indian blacklist, so they won't be able to travel from Indian Punjab into Pakistani Punjab and use that corridor. So it was all a political kind of gimmick, a political effort to take advantage and to highlight Khalistan issue and here in Canada. Okay, all said and done. The problem starts when you do these activities on a third country's soil, and when that country happens to be your friend, like Canada and Pakistan. I mean, they are apparently friendly countries. And you are bringing in your regional rivalries, your own politics onto the soil of Canada, and without any very good reasons. This is one dimension of it. And there are certain concerns of Canadian government as well about those groups who are fighting for separatism in India, and particularly Khalistan, and it is not really a hidden kind of thing, it's a known thing. And if you are going and mingling publicly with those groups, you are antagonizing 2 governments. One is your host country, who is, your job is to deal with Pakistan-Canada related issues, to enhance friendship and cooperation and foster economic relations between those 2 countries. This is none of your business to go and indulge into your regional politics and antagonizing your host country. So that's very important point. The second thing, which is even more important, more significant, is that Pakistan has opened that Kartarpur corridor, that corridor of 4 kilometers, which will connect Pakistan and India, and on both sides of those corridors there are sacred 6 shrines. And Pakistan, in a goodwill gestures to melt the ice and to thaw the relationship between two countries, they have offered India that we are opening this corridor so that people could mingle all together, all in a apparently in a good sense, in a good spirit, and it was supposed to create goodwill between two countries. It was supposed to create a kind of mingling or congenial atmosphere between the two people of both
between
countries.
two countries,
Between two countries,
Pakistan and India.
So
this is the issue of India and Pakistan.
India and Pakistan,
So-
and you are dragging this issue onto Canadian soil, and you are basically siding with those people who have their own political agenda to pursue in their home country, which is India. So this is one dimension. The second thing is that you are doing all this after you have offered India a goodwill and a peace gesture. So you are definitely antagonizing the country whom you are supposed to have, breaking the ice, whom you are supposed to be having a very good relationship after this step.
They are actually receiving an award. It was an award giving ceremony.
Yeah, it was award giving ceremony, and Pakistan's army chief name was written on that. It was not a very good scene and good gesture.
It was not a healthy gesture.
Very
from
healthy gesture.
Pakistan consulate and
not-
Pakistan government.
And look at this thing that Pakistani consul general in Toronto. He is the guy who is supposed to be having an excellent relationship with Canadian government, which is his host government, and who should be very sensitive to the diplomatic intricacies and to the diplomatic values of both the countries. And he should be focused on enhancing economic and political relations between the two countries. But instead, what he is doing? He is traveling and he is keen to be seen mingling with Indian separatist leaders. So you have basically offended New Delhi, you have basically offended Ottawa in one, I would say, a diplomatic masterstroke
It was actually a very messy situation which was created because embassies usually are the ambassadors of taking the goodwill gesture
That's right,
between
that's
the
right.
host country and the country you belong to. You
Yeah.
have nothing to do
Yeah,
with
yeah,
what
yeah. Yeah, that's a very surprising. That's very odd thing, and but I don't remember, or we can't recall any other incident in which a country of another country and is meeting the separatists of another country, and on the third country's soil to prove what, what the message they are giving to Canada in first place, what message they are giving to Delhi.
And the thing is, the whole Kartarpur session was basically a goodwill gesture to India, which has been washed out by doing such activities in
That's right,
Canada.
that's right.
I mean, you're doing the contradictory things.
That's right.
What you're saying,
That's
you're
right.
not standing on that.
Yeah.
So that is what is very, very pondering point in that.
Yeah, and I don't know what benefit Pakistani government has achieved from it, what Pakistani Foreign Office was thinking by sending this guy to meet those guys. I understand that the countries who are rivals and who are not particularly very good friend, they keep doing few things against each other whenever they have to. But those things are done by the people who never come onto the scene and who never show them publicly, and they don't do it on third country soil. They avoid doing that. So this guy is a public face of Pakistan, and he is doing in front of public in third country soil all these activities. So this is not a very healthy situation, And this also shows the mindset of Pakistani establishment who runs Foreign Office basically. In Pakistan, as we know, that Foreign Office and security policy, foreign policy are not run by the civilian governments and the civilian people. And whoever is running, it was a very bad move.
We have just discussed about the political activities of of those people who are actually the people who are responsible to carry the culture and to have the goodwill gesture. We talked about Pakistan. Now we are going to talk about another issue, which is Canada-China relationship, which is still under discussion, that how Canada should and would. We will discuss that, but first we will take a break. Let's go for a break.
Today we are showcasing Roti-matic. It's a fully automated roti maker. This is the first time we are bringing to Canada, and it's available on bestbuy.ca online.
Been using this device for a year now, and it's absolutely lifesaver to me.
This is very handy device. It's a small, compact, very easy to make the rotis.
You can make crepes, you can make wraps, you can make rotis, parathas. Multi-talented machine this is.
Now Roti-matic is available in Canada online at bestbuy.ca. Free shipping within 3 to 5 business days across Canada. Welcome back to Behind the News. Before break, we were discussing about the behavior of diplomats and Canadian position. So now we are going to touch upon another issue, which is we are allies of USA. We are very strong allies with United States, and we are having the issue of China, since we are a multicultural country and we have so many people around us. So Rizwan, what would you tell us about the Chinese front? So what is the take of Canadian government and where it is going?
Yes, Halima, as we have seen that this row between Canada and China that started about 3 weeks back, 1st of December to be precise. It's about 25, 26 days back. And let me give you a little bit background. Although the issue is old and people know about it, but let me just say a couple of sentences on that, if you allow. Huawei is China's corporate icon, and they are their biggest tech firm, and that goes into cell phone making and internet services and all. And one of the top executives, not one of the top executive of Huawei, Meng Wanzhou, she was traveling from Hong Kong to Mexico, and on her way, she was on a layover at Vancouver airport, and she was arrested because of an extradition request pending from the United States court. So that triggered a diplomatic row between situation between Canada and China, and she was released later on bail. But then what happened? The Chinese government retaliated very badly, and they arrested and detained two prominent Canadians who were living in China, and one of them was a former ambassador, and he was working with ICG, International Crisis Group, and another one was a businessman who was a tour operator. And those two guys are still detained, and despite Canadian government's best efforts, they have not been released as yet. And then there was a third lady who is a teacher, and she's from BC, British Columbia. She was also detained by the Canadian government, the Chinese government. The alarming thing, Halima, is that there is a report. There was a report just 4 or 5 days back in a leading Canadian daily, Toronto Star, that there are not these 3 people. There are as many as 200 Canadian people who are detained in China at this moment. And out of those 200, we understand that most of them are Canadian Chinese, having dual nationalities. But China does not recognize dual nationality. So it's pointless of saying that they were dual national. They were basically Canadians who were on a business trip or whatever, but they have been detained. So the retaliation, the magnitude of retaliation, what we are seeing from Beijing is alarming, to say the least, because this is not what generally happens in state-to-state relations. Even if something like this, there is some differences. There are differences on a detention of some person. They solve it on the case-to-case basis, and then there are channels to talk to, and they talk it out. But this time, the retaliation from the Chinese authorities, it is swift, and it is the magnitude is really alarming. The Canadian position is very simple. Canada is a close ally of United States, yes. But they have a very binding extradition treaty with the United States. So the request came from the United States United States top court, and the extradition request, Canada was bound to carry out that extradition request because, and then again they haven't handed it over. Meng to the U.S. authorities yet. The extradition request will have to be decided by courts later. So, in the manner and in haste in which Chinese government has reacted, has I would say that it has sent waves of alarm around the world capitals. That look, if Canadian citizens can be treated this way, then their own citizens can be treated that way as well. So it won't be definitely a good picture in the long run for the Chinese,
isn't it?
Because they are the one who are inviting Western world, especially, to come and do business in China. So if people stop traveling to China, then it won't be a one-way loss. The loss will be mutual.
But what do you see about Canadian government, since we see that we are having the issues of another country's problem in our own country? So how should what's going on? What is the issue?
Yeah, Halima. I'm sure, and the statements coming out from Ottawa, they clearly indicate that Canada is trying hard. And not only Canada, but the other friendly capitals around the world like Washington and Berlin and Paris, they are also trying hard to get those Canadians released. But even if they are released, the damage has been done. This is the war, whatever, the conflict of interest, trade interest between US and China. And China is attacking US allies. I mean, those people who are detained are not US citizens, they are Canadian citizens. And China is attacking US allies, and Canada is, just paying the price of being on the side of US on this trade war with China. And though they have a very healthy and very decent trade relationship with China of their own, but it was not considered, and it was just being seen a political tit-for-tat kind of situation. in which you detain my person, I detain your person. So it can, it had the potential of getting ugly, and it had the potential of getting blown into something big. But so far, Ottawa has managed to keep the lid down and keep it under control. But if when the days start passing, the public pressure on Ottawa will build. The Canadian public will start demanding Prime Minister Trudeau and his cabinet to do something about the release of those. Then it won't be a very behind the scene diplomacy. Then the step will come and Prime Minister Trudeau would be compelled to show some muscles to China. So, and that could inflame the situation. So I think both the capitals and including Washington, I mean, I think they are trying to keep it to lower the temperature as much as possible. But these things can, if they are left unsolved, they can build into something else.
They can have the consequences.
They can have the consequences. One, and second thing is there was another an unreported incident which was not very widely reported in the world, but that was a very significant. There was a Canadian plane aircraft who was patrolling in the skies of international skies around North Korea, because that plane was part of the surveillance sanctions which the world has imposed on North Korea. So that plane's job was to do surveillance that the sanctions are implemented. And the Chinese Air Force, they were also in international space, and they kind of issued unusual kind of gestures to Canadian pilot, and in an intimidating way. So in international diplomacy, these acts have meaning, and these acts have a kind of consequences kind of things which can trigger other things also. So it's not a very healthy situation. I think the world capitals and the trade war, whatever the trade issues between US and China, they have to be sorted out between Washington and Beijing. Whatever the concessions are. I mean,
Canadian citizens should not be detained there.
Detained there because there is a war going on between the other two parties. So,
yeah.
so that's my position is, because whatever the differences are, Beijing will have to talk to Washington. Beijing or any other countries, that's bilateral thing. So whatever the tariff issues and trade disputes they are having. But at the same time, detaining the third countries' people and in a kind of hostage situation, that you release our person, we release your person, that's not a very healthy gesture, and I don't think any government will stand to gain anything from it.
We have discussed about China's situation with in context of USA. We are going to continue to check upon United States stand around the world, how United States is maneuvering its politics around the world. We will discuss about America and South Asia, how it is going ahead. But we have to take a break first. Let's go for a break.
Today we are showcasing Roti-Matic. It's a fully automated roti maker. This is the first time we are bringing to Canada, and it's available on bestbuy.ca online.
Been using this device for a year now, and it's absolutely lifesaver to me.
This is very handy device. It's a small, compact, very easy to make the rotis.
So you can make crepes, you can make wraps, you can make rotis, parathas. Multi-talented machine this is.
Now, Roti-Matic is available in Canada online at bestbuy.ca. Free shipping within 3 to 5 business days across Canada. Welcome back to Behind the News. Now, we will talk about US in Middle East, specifically in Syria, and US in South Asia, specifically with Afghanistan. Lately, United States has decided to pull out its army from there. So we are going to discuss with Rizwan that how do you see this political situation this time, because in the future certain steps were taken and then it was redecided that United States is going to keep their army there. So now again they are stating that they are going to pull it out. So what are your observations?
Yes, Halima, this was to begin with, it was a surprise move from when President Trump announced to the world that they are pulling their troops back from Syria. The troops in Syria are coming back, though he didn't give any time frame that when they would come home and how much would come home, how many. And at the same time, he told the world, again, there was no time frame, but he gave the numbers that he is pulling back 7,000 troops, cutting down to half at the moment from Afghanistan as well. So these pull-out announcements from President Trump were surprised many. And surprised not only the adversaries, it surprised friends as well, and people in allies, and people in Britain, people in Germany, people in France, and they were surprised that I think apparently they were not consulted prior to the announcement, and President Trump's own defense secretary, Jim Mattis, he didn't take it lightly as well. And he mentioned in his resignation letter that, U.S. should engage more with the world rather than pulling out troops from other countries, something on those lines. So it is a situation which can have a real, a kind of important repercussions, and geopolitical and political both, because pulling out from Syria at this time, Afghanistan is a different situation. These two pullouts are by no means are the same kind of things. Because in Afghanistan they had 14,000 troops and they are in an active and advanced stage of talks with Taliban, and they must be looking at some kind of situation of peace in 6 months' time, and they must have chalked out a roadmap that how to move on that. And still they are going to keep 7,000 people over there. But in Syria, US had no significant boots on ground. They were working with the insurgents over there who were pro-Western forces, and the US had sent 2,000 people to advise and train those insurgents who were fighting Assad forces. And suddenly they have announced to pull them. I don't know if all of them would come back or pull them back. That's what they said. So
it's always a gradual procedure that they decide accordingly, and it is never a very strict rule. We are going to pull. In between, while they are doing that, the consequences, the situations, all that matters a lot.
You're right. I mean, that's not something which are given like a parameter and a hard
Deadline,
rules that
hard-
look, I mean, how many are coming in by this date, how many are coming. It's not like that, but still it shows 2-3 things. Why it is a matter of particular concern for the United States friends around the world. Because they fear that American forces were fighting the menace of extremism over there in Syria. They were busy eliminating ISIS, which is menace to the whole world, and they have managed to drive them back. And there is a very small pocket around the banks of Euphrates that they are now confined in, and there are very few manageable. I think they are manageable people. But the concern of United States allies is that same thing happened in Afghanistan in the early 90s. That U.S. pulled back thinking that the job is finished, the mission is accomplished, and as soon as they went back, 9/11 happened. And it is something on these lines is being feared again by the United States front. That look, I mean, they are defeated, no doubt, ISIS. They are eliminated and driven out of Syria, but they are still there. And Iraq is still a lawless country, which can provide pockets of heavens to those insurgents who want to regroup, and maybe if some sponsors comes in, starts giving them funds and trainings again, they can regroup. So why not to finish them off once and for all and then move on, rather than deciding when the battle is still on and deciding that no, I am off from the battle.
No,
so
but do you think that it is possible to finish it all together, or what do you think about the latest situation in current times when the world is so global and things are very differently handled now? We are going towards a very different dimension of the world. So is it the result of that?
Yes,
How much?
I think that's certainly one way of looking at it, because the kinds of war which we used to see with boots on the ground and with the tanks rolling in, like last time we saw when U.S. went into Iraq, and hundreds of thousands of armies going in and finishing off the job. The whole model is changing now, because the United States wants to work more with the partners and allies on the ground, rather than sending their own boots on the ground. So we have seen it lately in Afghanistan. We have seen it lately, in Syria is the prime example. But the concern of the people who oppose this early pullout move is that it's not only ISIS. Okay, you must have finished ISIS, and you must be confident that ISIS is not coming back, and you can manage them in Iraq even if they are. But at the same time, what about Iranian influence in Syria? They would be still around because they are based in Lebanon, Hezbollah. And what about Russians are very much on the ground. So leaving the field to the United States adversaries, and in this situation can create security situations for the other countries. So that's what the allies of the United States are saying, that first plug all the holes, first secure all kind of securities which you can have, and then there may be a time when you can pull out.
So what do you think about Afghanistan and all that? Because that area is still, if you see from the Chinese point of view, India, Afghanistan and all those countries, South Asians. So is it a good idea to again decide about pulling out?
Afghanistan is an entirely different ball game from Syria. Afghanistan, if the United States, though here President Trump is again being criticized for pulling out from Afghanistan, But I can understand that decision because they had decided not to reinforce their troops over there. They were operating on 14,000 people in Afghanistan for the entire country. They were not having boots on ground in the provinces of Afghanistan. They were basically securing those areas where Afghan government writ is there. And those areas which were out of control of Afghan government's writ, they were not interested to retake it. But they were making sure, the US troops, that they do not base there, the Taliban. Now, with the kind of situation in VR, where Taliban and United States have started talking, and all the Taliban groups are involved, I think the United States feels more confident that they can proceed with their model of keeping minimum troops on the ground, but controlling the situation with the kind of advisors and other security operators in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan's context, I can understand the situation. In Syria's context, if it was only concerned about ISIS, I can still understand President Trump's decision. But when you take into account Hezbollah, when you take into account Iran, and when you take into account Russian involvement over there, then it becomes difficult to understand that why so early.
Thank you very much for your analysis today, Rizwan. Viewers, I hope you enjoyed today's Behind the News and you have peeked through us that how things actually are behind what is the headline of the news. Thank you very much for watching our Behind the News today.